So if that isn't a review to go by, then I don't know what will get you hooked. Wall Street Journal, a celebration of a singular spirit in an impure sport. Impure.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Verge's Alternative F1 podcast. And how are you guys today?
Oh, we're like in week 108 of lockdown, and we're doing good.
I've just done a royal wave to introduce a podcast, so clearly I'm going a bit insane, if I'm honest. That's how we do things. That's how it is now.
Obviously, I'm here with the co-hosts, Sam and Matt. You know, the guys that keep me on the straight and narrow and keep things rolling. So you know, obviously, I'm going to ask every week because obviously it varies from week to week our lockdown sanity. How are you guys coping? Out of 100, how badly are you ready for this to be over? Obviously, we know we have to be here. Quarantine police are going to tell me off yet again. I know this. I know why we're doing it. We're doing as we're told. But how are you guys?
I'm all right. I think I'm at a good level of like 75 at this point. I was at 100. I feel like I've come back down a bit. I feel like I had a very
Was it the weekend? Was it the weekend that got you to 100?
Yeah, I had a couple of beers. I chilled out in the sun. I, had the house to myself for a couple of hours.
You just literally going to be like, I'm just going to go over to the pub.
Yeah, pretty much. I went to the Garden Inn. That's basically what I did, and I had a couple of bevies inside the beer garden. That's it.
Matt, how you doing, brother?
Yeah, I feel like last week I was on a 10, and then now we're back up at a fat 60. So we're feeling good. 60 is like the 40% that's left over is basically wanting to enjoy more of the outdoors than my surrounding area of North Greenwich, where basically it's filled with a bunch of people that don't look like they're really observing lockdown properly. Because I'm thinking there's way too many of you like chilling around this area, wandering about. There's no exercise, so I don't know. It's a weird one, but I'm feeling good. Like, what can I say that's been of note? Like, I'm on an 8-day streak on Duolingo of learning Spanish, so that's a kind of madness that we're up to. This
is putting us to shame.
Well, no, he's just nominated himself for the interview with Carlos Sainz.
That's all right.
Sans.
We can do like Spanish and English slang. That's going to be.
Classic.
There we go. But that's the thing. Yeah, I feel like that's one thing I've always found really amazing. Like working around, working in and amongst Formula One is that so many. Even Charles Leclerc speaks multiple languages. He can spit out Italian. He can spit out perfect English, and can obviously speak his native language. And I definitely noticed that around the paddock when I would be working around courses with great commentators like the great James Allen, of course, big legend. Had great pleasure of working with him quite a lot, and we would walk through the paddock together. And depending on what team he passes by and what engineers he ends up meeting, to switch his languages. And I was like, right. If I want to hold it down in this industry, I need to first perfect English, which I'm working on, and then Spanish will be the next up.
I need to speak my own native language.
Let's start off by clear English first of all. So we've all had a quite a busy week in the world of Verge alternative sport. Like we've literally had our one of our first since we started this podcast. Obviously, we've got lots of content that we're going to be refreshing and bringing back to you guys as throwbacks. But I mean, we just had a recent interview with the amazing Jessica Hawkins from the W Series, or not the W Series, from W Series. And honestly, I must say, like, it was if you guys can check it out on www.vergemagazine.co.uk. It's a really great read. She was an amazing interviewee. The fact that she is a stunt woman as well, for a stunt driver for the new James Bond movie that's coming out. I tried to get little bits of information about the film.
Don't tell me you tried to pry.
You know what?
I did try.
Me and Jessica have a bit in common then, because here's a little exclusive for Verge Alternative F1 podcast, and probably not an exclusive for my friends because I already know this and I've bored to death of it. But your boy, I also, Senor Matthew Connell, is also in a James Bond film. Uncredited, but I'm in a James Bond film.
Excuse me.
What?
Here we go.
How
What
the?
film? Wait, you can't just let that out and just.
This is it's a 1 hour podcast. We've got things, we've got films to talk about today. No, actually, this is very relevant because this is going to lead on to the topic of today's episode. But when I was young, I needed money. Pause.
Still do, don't you?
When I was at university studying a film degree, I thought, what is the best, most budget way to get a free experience while getting paid for it? Well, of course, it's dipping into the wacky world of movie extras, because that was basically like free education for getting paid. Problem is, you have to mix it up with a lot of actor types every day, every morning. If you're doing like a 4 or 5 day shoot and you're having breakfast with someone, you're gonna, if you've watched Ricky Gervais's Extras, that series is literally on the money. It's on the money of the characters. And it's always, you get these kind of guys. You might be in the queue, like just minding your own business, get some cornflakes or debating Frosties, depending on how sugary you're feeling. And someone might just walk up to you and go, all right, mate, how's it going? I'm like, yeah, I'm good. How are you doing? Yeah, I've been in Harry Potter. I've been in like 6. They'll tell you, like, what's up. They'll tell you the full credits. They'll be like, yeah. And they'll act like
it's my CV.
Yeah, they'll be like, yeah, I've got an IMDb page. It's like, mate, you're an extra. And I also don't really care. So yeah, we did a night shoot once upon a time for, I would say, arguably the best James Bond film. Not because I was in it, but because it was just straight up good. Skyfall. So we did a night scene in the underground when Daniel Craig was getting chased by Javier Bardem.
I remember that.
Pretty wild.
You was in the tube bit?
I was in all those underground scenes. So
Sam and I are going to be.
We're going to rewatch that. Yeah, 100%.
I'm going to say I only had to watch it once to notice that I couldn't see myself. But I will give you another Easter egg to find out. Is if you watch Clint Eastwood's director, he directed this film Hereafter, starring Matt Damon. If you not watch but survive how boring that film is, and I don't have any speaking roles, but there's a perfect 2-shot of me and your boy Matt Damon. Come on screen.
I'll take my time. Well, we haven't got nothing else to do, so we'll take our time. Okay. I'll make the time to actually.
Exactly.
I was in the back of. In fact, I've been in the back of 2 episodes of The Apprentice. I'll have you know.
Have you?
Oh yeah.
See, now that's immediately more impressive because I really like the Apprentice.
No, but the episode.
Was you a contestant or you was?
No. They filmed that.
He failed, and now he's here.
I got a picture with. Here's actually quite a funny story. So do you remember when they were shooting the flower episode when they had to dress up as flowers?
Absolutely.
It was one of the girls I work with. It was her hen do, and her name is Stacey, and she's marrying a guy called Gavin. So for her hen do, we obviously dressed her up as Nessa. But Gavin is a massive Claude fan, so I went up to Claude and asked if Stacey could have a picture with Claude, and I do have a picture of Stacey dressed up as Nessa with Claude.
Wow.
It's it's
that.
It was a wonderful moment.
It's coming out now. All of these background stories is going to come out. They're telling us this before it comes out in the papers.
100%.
Before they were famous for podcasts.
Before they were famous, yeah.
So just lastly on Jessica, it made me more of a fan of the W Series. We are obviously going to be covering it and getting you guys to be able to know, all the different drivers, and it's an amazing, competition. And the fact is that we are, and I think I could safely say we're the only ones championing, protesting, pushing the issue for us to be able to back the first or have the first women F1 driver, for 44 years. Am I right, Sam? Sam was.
It's off the top of my head.
Well, this is facts based on my opinion.
Facts based on your opinion.
But on a serious note, I really do want us to be able to be the people that actually given a platform, an early platform to this, one of these guys who are going to break through because they definitely deserve it. I've seen some of the footage. You must have it. I'll put the links down below for you to be able to look at Jessica's Instagram. She's amazing, and she's promised to teach us how to drive as well. You know, especially Matt as well. You know,
yeah, Matt needs to actually learn to drive.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm convinced I'm going to get to somehow convince someone that I could like test a car on a British racetrack before I even have a legal certificate. We're going to be somehow. I've had this little idea in my head now that we are going to somehow get some access, and there's going to be some kind of car, and we're going to be allowed to test it. I'm going to jump through the loopholes, and hopefully this podcast is young enough that no one actually watches this and starts collecting data on me. And they'll be like, yeah, do you want to test this? Do you want to try this? And I'm going to be like, yes, I do. I clearly know how to drive without the license, let alone. And that's going to be it. And as long as no one asks questions, then I'm going to take every opportunity because it makes great content.
Sam and I will be like...
To be fair, though, I think
he can, can't he, anyway? He may be...
Yeah, on private land, you can drive without a license. Don't ask me why.
There you go.
To be fair, I really want to put Matt in the passenger seat when I'm driving because that would be hilarious. It'd be like watching... Right, it'd be like watching Dre when he did his hot lap. Be crying.
Oh mate, I'm fearless. I love a bit of speed. I'm the kind of guy that if when a plane gets a bit wonky and starts dropping out of the sky, I'm like, come on, I'm popcorn ready. I like the drama. I like speed.
Jesus Christ.
So on the we're catching up now with everything that's been going on. Obviously, there's been a bit of news today and yesterday. Obviously, the French Grand Prix is off now. Austria is if I'm correct, is on the July the 15th is to become the new start of the season. So obviously, I don't know why. Please tell me. You guys tell me. But in a lot of the comments I was reading on the F1 Instagram, people saying, "Oh, thank God the French one's off. It's a bit of a waste of time anyway."
Nah.
I'll take any race, but you know, what's your guys' view on the news?
It's just so you know, it's July 5th. It's July 5th, but yeah, I think.
Oh, is it July 5th?
Yeah.
Did I get it wrong? I'm sorry.
I think we put an extra 1 in front of our little.
Oh, did I say 15th? Apologies.
Yeah.
Apologies, everyone.
It's probably
July 115.
This is pure lack of sleep and all the.
I mean, you're running. Yeah, exactly. You're running on like half an hour's sleep, so I'm not exactly surprised.
I know. I just got them in my ear, and they just told me that it's this date. Yeah. No, go.
Nah, so I feel like Austria is this wonderful place here. It's a great place to start.
And this great place.
And that great place.
Lovely.
Look at us two, my little Austrian little. It's a sound of music coming out.
Austrian Touring Board is sponsoring this episode, just in case you're wondering.
Yeah, there's a plug here. No, I think Austria is a wicked track. I mean, we saw some pretty good racing there last year. I think I personally like the French Grand Prix. I love Circuit Paul Ricard. I don't see any problem with it at all, really. But I mean, it's sad that it's gone. It's another race that we've lost.
What is the reason why there are so many like bad comments about it? You know, just so I know, what is the difference?
I mean, it's not exactly the most exhilarating Grand Prix in the world.
Okay.
I'm going to be totally honest with you. It's no Monaco or it's no like Singapore or Baku like that. It's not a really tight street circuit where you get lots of action. Yeah, it's a proper racetrack, but actually it's a test track. So there's a lot of runoff areas, so there's no spectacular crashes.
So the track is considered not the most interesting.
Yeah, I'd say that it's a test track. That's what it was originally built as. Like I think there's like 5 or 6 circuits in one. I don't know what the number is, but there's quite a few circuit configurations. There's corners. It is quite hard to watch if you don't know the track or you don't know Grand Prix because they're driving through like the middle of different corners and like it's different to track. But I mean, so I can imagine that people that don't really watch Formula One that much will like it for the entertainment value. Seeing people crash, you don't really get that. Like, yeah, I mean, I still think it's a wicked Grand Prix. I think any Grand Prix, to be fair, is good for me. But yeah, I can understand why people don't like it as much as that Singapore, because obviously people want to see smashes into the wall, which is fair enough. But yeah, I mean,
but we got our start in Austria.
So I mean, this is why it could be confusing because this is Paul Ricard. So if you don't know your way around the track, so you can go like this way, you can go that way, and you can like there's so many different. There's like 4 chicanes in that one picture. which is that's the car in the middle.
Love it. I think it's
Like
I just think, yeah, it's got its own character. I just love the look. You know exactly when you watch that race, you know it's a French race, and it basically is a Mario Kart track. So let's have it. If you're complaining that you don't like it, it's because your favourite driver isn't good enough to win it.
And also, it's also the home Grand Prix for 3 drivers. So it's Pierre Gasly, Grosjean, and the adopted home of Charles Leclerc of the Monaco.
Well, let's move on to our Grand Prix that we obviously look forward to the most. Silverstone. It's unfortunately it's been confirmed that it's going to be closed to fans. But obviously we're disappointed as fans. But obviously we understand why. But say it's obviously at least we're looking like we're going to be getting a race. Well, the race is over.
I'll take a race, I think. I mean, this is the thing. It's one of the, I would say, the foundations of motorsport. So we cannot afford to lose a Silverstone and a Monaco this year. That would just be criminal. Mm. But look, fans and no fans, I think, we've seen a lot of the interviews with Formula One drivers on Sky Sports doing their show that was done as of this episode release would have been yesterday on a Monday. And I think all the drivers are just accepting that they just want to race with or without fans. They're going to put on the best show possible for us on TV. I think that was a quote from Ocon when he was doing his interview. So I think we will take that, and I will also take and hold very closely to my heart, my fingers crossed, that still some way, somehow, that media will be allowed in and will be masked up to the grills and sanitized up, and we can do our thing at distance.
Yes.
Walking with proper wingspan. So hopefully, if the 3 of us can get down there, then that's perfect. If not, at a 2-meter distance.
So F1 Media,
we need to get an extra long mic boom.
we F1 Media, we are prepared to be in individual bubbles, rolling, so we can actually not infect
Zorbs.
Yeah, so literally. Just put the mic in, just a little, like a piece in, so we can actually interview people. However, or we just won't even interview people. We just want to be there, if possible. This is complete selfishness and self-indulgence, obviously, to the listeners and viewers.
Someone's got to make watchable content, so
we're doing this for you. We do this for you. Our selfishness is for you.
Selfishness. We're putting ourselves at risk.
Exactly.
Someone's got to walk around that. Someone has to walk around that paddock that isn't a driver looking half important. So if no one's going to do it, then we might as well do it.
Heroes.
And also know a lot less and be a hell of a lot funnier.
So I'm like, are you guys really hyped about that race in particular? Is that your favourite race?
Mate, I love Silverstone, and it's I think the one reason for me why I love Silverstone is it's the home of F1. Like most of the teams, they sleep in their own beds. They cycle to the track, drive to the track, so everyone's fresh. There's no jet lag. Like they come, and the atmosphere, like you get the red arrows going over the top. You get so much activity going down at the circuit. There's hot laps. There's driver interviews, and it's a track like this year. We've got so many British drivers on the grid. Like we've got Lewis, we've got George, we've got. I mean, I know Albon races under a Thai flag, but he is British as well. Like we've got Lando. It's a brilliant spectacle, especially for those lads that are flying the flag when they're racing. So it's a wicked race to race at.
Well, let's hope that in some form of way we can actually get some type of access, because obviously this is I had my first taste of the Silverstone Grand Prix last year, and I'm absolutely hooked. And fingers crossed we can get to go. But failing that, then we're just happy that there's races for us to be able to talk about and discuss, and more content for you listeners and viewers. So last week,
can I jump in? Sorry,
go for it.
I want to jump in with a big shout out to one of our favourite drivers.
Yes,
this guy here, Lando Norris.
Talking
of British drivers. Lando went and dominated across the pond, didn't he? He won his first IndyCar race. Admittedly, it was a sim race, but he won after spinning. He was leading the race. He spun out, dropped down to 8th, I think it was, and then fought his way back, and he still won. So it was McLaren.
And his internet held up. That's the biggest fix.
And his internet.
I'm surprised he logged on.
Fix his internet. I love that.
Honestly, but it was a McLaren one too. McLaren won too, so Matt's going to be happy.
Come on.
Salute to you, Mr. Norris. so last week we was discussing, like, we was going to start looking at obviously in this period of time where we can actually watch as much content, backdated, and films and all sorts of other interviews and old races, so forth. But this last week we decided that we was going to look at old films, or films that are race related, F1 related. So Sam, if you introduce the film that you guys watched.
So me and Matt watched, I think it was between us, 4 different documentaries and films that we watched.
And how did Andre watch? Huh?
How did Andre watch?
I'm sorry. It just threw me there. It threw me under there.
He's a busy man.
Unfortunately, guys, that we cover a lot of sports. Well, fortunately, we cover a lot of sports. Last week, just full disclaimer, was the NFL draft, and obviously you can see on our pages that, like, literally we covered that thing left, right, and centre. But something had to give, and
the draft.
What he's saying, listeners, is you were the ones that had to give. Is what he's trying to say, and me and Matt had to hold that for
just for this week. Yes, I'm saying.
To be fair, though, you also are again running on like 3 hours sleep. So
absolutely, it's worth it for the great NFL content and interviews that you got, Andre. So kudos to that minimal.
I love you too, guys.
And it was draft day as well. So I was definitely watching draft day. So
I had no idea what was going on, but it looked fun, and the girlfriends looked disappointed.
Oh my God! Don't let me get into that one. But that's.
I was going to say,
please log on to vergemagazine.co.uk for all of our. Actually, we've got one coming out tomorrow. Obviously, just a plug on Sport, Alternative Sport, our platform with all sports for all fans. Please have a look at that, and we have got some funny discussions about that. But back to Formula One.
To Formula One. So actually, my first documentary wasn't about someone that ever raced in Formula One, funnily enough. So my first one I watched was Shelby American, which is the story of the legendary Carroll Shelby. Many of you, like, if you don't know who Carroll Shelby is, you'll probably know what a Shelby GT350 Mustang is. It's the Cobra, absolute legend. But yeah, it's a Netflix show, so it's a little bit of a plug. But yeah, it's a wicked show. I also watched Life of Speed, the story of Juan Manuel Fangio. I got it right. But yeah,
I like that pronunciation there.
I was watching the entire documentary, and it's in a different language, so I had to learn. But the first one is about this legend. This is Carroll Shelby. It's a really good documentary. And I feel like it's basically the story of Carroll Shelby's life, where he grew up. He was a chicken farmer originally, but for those of you that have seen Le Mans 66, the movie that came out in the summer, at the end of last year, it kind of charts the history before that, and it also charts that period. So if you've seen that movie, you'll know that, like, Henry Ford II was really pushing for Ford to win Le Mans, and also there was a big beef between him and Enzo Ferrari. But this documentary has Ferrari's son in it. It's got Edsel Ford and Henry Ford the third in it, which is amazing. So Edsel Ford II, who is now CEO of Ford Motor Company. So it's got a lot of legitimate drivers in it. It's got all of the Shelby American mechanics. So basically, the story is that Carroll Shelby started racing for a weekend hobby, really. Started racing MGs and became a chicken farmer to supplement his racing. Didn't do very well as a chicken farmer, or his chickens died. So he started racing properly. He was a terrible chicken farmer. Started racing properly. But the dude had a heart condition, right? A really bad heart condition. So he was racing while popping nitroglycerin pills to keep himself alive. Absolute nuts. Definitely
a different way to go.
Right, exactly. But yeah, basically he then started customizing his own cars. Then he started a good partnership with Ford, and he opened up his own company called Shelby American, and the entire team, they were renowned for being absolute mavericks, but incredibly good at their job. And so Shelby spotted this this culture in LA and the West Coast at the time for hot rodding. So like for those of you that love Grease, the film, you'd see like Danny Zuko's got that car with flames down the side of it. Like Shelby cottoned onto that trend where like kids, like 18-year-old kids, were like modding their own cars, like ripping the engines out, boring out the engine, putting new spark plugs in, no carburetors, all that kind of stuff. And basically Shelby was like, these are the kids that I need to do my engines, to do my cars, because they're already great at it. So there's literally this bunch of hot rodders bought a chassis from Bristol Motors, which is a UK company, who still have a shop on Park Lane, I'll have you know.
Really?
Yeah, they still exist. They're kicking it strong. I've actually watched a Bristol. If it's the same people, is it? So Bristol Street Motors, they sponsor a fan award for the PFA in football. So we've messed around with them with Jamie Vardy. So it's a really weird combination to work with Bristol Street Motors and Jamie Vardy and a PFA. So there you go. Please continue.
But yeah, so they bought like these, basically they bought the chassis of this new AC, this Bristol AC car, and then they put a new lightweight body on it. They had the body, but they refabricated it, and then they put a brand new Ford small block V8 in it, and that became known as the AC Cobra, which many of you have probably seen. The social media icon Dan Bilzerian has one. It's often on his Instagram page. But yeah, like that thing flew. They were winning Daytona, they were winning Sebring, and then basically Ford the minimum, like, we need to build our GT40, and they. And long story short, they failed the first 2 years, and then on the third year, Shelby had a team who had the Shelby American team, and Ford wasn't that confident in Shelby, so they'd also brought in another company called Holman and Moody, and Holman and Moody also brought in another team. I think it was something Allen Racing, Tim Allen Racing, I don't know, Allen Racing, and they basically, all three of them were competing to build these GTs to make sure they win. Shelby absolutely dominated, like completely. They basically, one of the engineers called his last name was Remington, I can't remember his first name, but he invented a system, a quick change system for brake discs and calipers in the middle of the race. So like in an F1 car, you pull into the pits, they change 4 tires in like 2 seconds, right? That's changing like 4 tires with a pneumatic gun. These guys were unscrewing the wheel nuts, changing the brake discs and calipers, putting them back on, then putting the wheels back on. Yeah, it's absolutely nuts, man. They're absolutely nuts. But yeah, like as a show, it was really good. It's really informative. It's a very easy watch. I won't lie, very, very easy watch. But it also, like, it gives you a lot of history into who this guy was, because like he's well known in the industry. Everyone loves him. He's an icon. Everyone knows the Shelby name. Most people know the Shelby name, but not a lot of people know the history of him and how he got his start in motor racing. And not a lot of people know that he was actually a championship winning racer. Like, he was an incredible racing car driver, and he only decided to build Shelby American as a car fabrication design business because he couldn't race anymore because of his heart. So it very much tells a story of how he became this incredible racing driver, but you know, fate took its turn, and he decided that he was going to monopolize on that and open up a shop, and then he wins Le Mans and like absolutely dominates them.
Sounds like a decent film. I think definitely, now things have calmed down now, I'll definitely have a watch of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's got some really great interviews with some really great people, like Peter Brock, who's one of his mechanics that then went on to form his own team afterwards. So like Shelby was a mentor. Like, he was teaching these kids from a young age, and then went on to develop their own successful racing teams. He's a really humble guy, and I think he was very well respected, and that his mechanic shop was seen as like the place where you wanted to work. So yeah, it gives you a lot of history into who he was. It's really nice. It's really amazing.
And Matt, what was your the film that you managed to watch?
So film number 1 that I watched was Senna. Of course, shockingly for me, let's see if here we go. Yay. Come on. I wasn't really planning on that, but as Sam was doing this thing, I thought, yeah, we might as well keep this production quality running. And here we are.
So podcast people, Matt has changed his background to Ayrton Senna's, just to keep you informed.
I did it first.
Yeah, I'm going to say disclaimer. There's nothing for me to claim here other than I'm just copying the format as we run, because that's the kind of guy I like to be. I like to keep it simple. But yeah, I got to watch Senna, which was quite the an unbelievably important story in the form of Formula One, which this documentary film was released in 2010. So this was, if you don't know who Ayrton Senna is by now, go back and have a look at this guy, because this guy is a catalyst for what creates the championship fuel inside Lewis Hamilton. Lewis Hamilton is obsessed with this guy and looks up to this guy. And of course, one of the best Brazilian Formula One racers that obviously unfortunately passed away in a crash at the San Marino Grand Prix. And obviously it was something that happened way too soon, as a man that was, completely coming into his prime. He died at the age of, I think it was 34.
Was 34, yeah.
34,
it was the year I was born.
Wow. So here we go. So a massively significant year. And, this is,
Thank you.
this is, we got the greats, you got the Senna years. And this, it was interesting because I'm a big lover of documentaries. And I think what was quite revealing about this is you can watch it on Amazon. I think you can rent it on YouTube. And it's a documentary in a format that it doesn't use retrospective interviews like you would see when you watch like a Tiger King or something like that, other high-end documentaries where, you're getting people to quite dreamily look back on the history of these races. But what I think was really important about this is, without having retrospective interviews and using each moment in a linear fashion as it happens, gives you an idea of what kind of, how the rise and fall of a great in motorsport can happen, especially in Formula One. I think there's a massive, you kind of feel throughout the whole process that something. If you didn't know, something clearly bad is going to happen. But still, if you did know the outcome, it's still amazing to see that all these moments and all these emotions and feelings that Ayrton Senna had in the build-up to his to this defining moment in his life. So it was great to rewatch the moments of his rivalry with his French rival Alain Prost and teammate, and couldn't hate the guy any more than I could. I think Alain Prost is, he played a political game, as you will see throughout this documentary. But again, any champion, any great it's obviously not personally aren't perfect. It's the win at all costs kind of mentality. And I enjoyed that battle, even though it was biasly on the side of Senna, because I got a lot of respect for those Brazilian racers. I think they bring so much excitement and flair for our sport. But so obviously it's all that story about World Championship wins. We had Japan '98 where you had the pure BS moment of where they had the collision between Prost and Senna, which Senna managed to get his car going with the help of the marshals, got his car to continue. But at that time, obviously the head of Formula One, Jean-Marie Ballester, who was French, old, obnoxious, and very stubborn, did a lot to favour for Alain Prost, and even revealed that when he basically disqualified Senna from that 1989 Japan race, basically effectively gave the World Championship to Prost. So hugely controversial and very, great drama for those that obviously didn't know what happened. Of course, there was many haunting moments of, Senna being very aware of his mortality, because he realised that as more and more people were putting the risk to their lives and getting injured and ending up in crashes, that he was becoming much more conscious of what could be in for him, because he was a very fast racer that came with high risk, which was hugely entertaining for us, but also frustrating for Formula One fans. So imagine if Romain Grosjean had unbelievable pace but drove the way he did, then you'd be thinking, oh Jesus, this guy's a liability. So of course, Alain Prost, if you're in the French camp, would think this guy's a pain in the ass. But Senna is no doubt, 3 world championships up at the age of 34 was unbelievable. But for me, I highly recommend it. I think if you weren't going to watch it, I think this would be my one kind of negative about it. Is, to be honest, you could go on Motorsport YouTube channel or Formula One Motorsport channel and experience those key moments just by doing the search on YouTube. But nevertheless, really, really good Very, very good documentary film. Lots of positive reviews on the old Rotten Tomatoes. We got someone at the New Yorker that said it was no, his review is boring, so I'm going to read his review. But someone at film.com called it captivating, chilling, surprisingly sublime. So if that isn't a review to go by, then I don't know what will get you hooked. Wall Street Journal, a celebration of a singular spirit in an impure sport. Impure.
Impure?
This dude loved to cheat this, so what? Impure in some sense.
Someone's going to write her now.
Yeah, right. The only time we were impure as a sport was when James Hunt was riding, and that was the Playboy era. Do you know what I mean? It's very different. I love Senna as a
Who would you say is our obviously there's films like Rush that's come out that I was supposed to watch, just disclaimer, but I will watch, and I will be able to come back next week and say here's what I think. But obviously there's films like Rush. Obviously they've opened up F1 has finally opened the doors for people to be able to experience documentaries like Drive to Survive. But like just on that, like who, if we talk about like the documentaries, who is the person that actually kind of really like you warm to from watching the documentaries from Drive to Survive, for example?
I tell you what, I'm actually, after watching it, so this is Juan Manuel Fangio.
He just wants to say the name.
Yeah, I do. I really do. I tell you what, there's two people, and Juan Manuel, for me, after watching this documentary, I have a newfound respect for him as a driver. He's often talked about, and Lewis has been compared to him as a 5-time world champion. He was a really down-to-earth person. He was a mechanic and an engineer, and he knew the ins and outs of his car. He knew how to. There was one part in the documentary where he talks about how he completely rebuilt his engine, or stripped his engine down, bored out the cylinders, and polished the spark plugs. Left it for the mechanics to put back together in the morning before the race, so they knew where everything went. And he went and won, like with basically a brand new engine, because he'd spent all that time putting into his car. And I think the only other driver that I know of who's gone to that, not to that level as in breaking an engine down, because you can't really do that in modern F1 because they are so complex. But I remember listening to a podcast about Michael Schumacher from one of his engineers' point of views. And Schumacher, I'm not going to say I'm his biggest fan, I'm not, but he's an incredible racing driver. But he often seemed quite arrogant. But actually, when you look at the backstory of Schumacher, he knew everyone in his team by name. Every Christmas, he brought everyone a gift. He would go to the opposite side of the garage, so not his team, not his mechanics, his teammates' mechanics, and he'd always say congratulations on a good race. He would always be at the test track longer than he needed to be, extra days. He'd fly. He once flew to test and then flew to qualify on the Friday and the Saturday, because he was so. It was so important for him to know his car inside out, because as he said, he couldn't race a car without knowing how that car performed and how it was built. And I think I look at the similarities between Juan Manuel Fangio and Schumacher, and see that these are two drivers that not only go on a track on a Sunday and win a race, but they know their team, they respect their team, and they know how to drive a car. And I think actually watching this documentary, he is, and I will go out and say Juan Manuel Fangio is the best driver in the world, because these cars were uncomfortable. They weren't designed for driver ergonomics. They were ridiculously hard to drive. There's no aerodynamics. There's a part in it where Toto Wolff describes how these cars weren't designed to grip to the road. They were designed to slide around corners so they could get the tightest corner angle. That they were drifting in some of these races. And like, there's part of the footage where they're racing in Monaco and there's no wall. Like, they come round the corner, so when they go down to back, there's no wall and there's just sea. And there's 8 cars piled up in this short, there is a wall, it's like a really short wall. And there's just like cars just crashed into it, but there's no like barriers or anything. And if they had hit that at any speed, they could have just gone straight over the top. And I mean, this is 1953, 1954.
Yeah, I'm quite thankful that safety regulations have actually kicked in somewhat since then.
Well, actually, to be fair,
it gave us a lot more content, but
to be fair, it was Senna So that weekend in San Marino,
Yeah.
That was one of the worst weekends in Formula One, because before we lost Senna on Sunday, we lost Roland Ratzenberger on the Saturday.
Oh, okay.
And also Rubens Barrichello smashed into the wall during qualifying and was
Brutal
injured.
crash.
A really brutal crash.
It was
And
the worst
obviously,
looking crash almost.
exactly. And like, actually, after Senna's death, so the doctor in that, Professor Sid Watkins, I think, after Senna's death, worked very closely with the FIA to improve safety, which is where carbon fiber tubs came from and all that kind of thing. That's why a modern F1 car can survive an impact of like 200 miles an hour. But and it's really sad that it had to be that way, but it was Senna's death that realistically catalyzed the change in Formula One safety standards, because after Senna, Jules Bianchi in 2014 became the next fatality.
Mm.
So, you know, you're talking 20 years. Like, that's nuts.
Yeah,
to change safety in such a short period of time. To be that safe as a sport. Like, when you watch this documentary about Juan Manuel Fangio, the 65 racing drivers lost their lives during that period of time.
You think to yourself, how did they carry on doing it?
How did they carry on doing it? They knew when they were getting in the car that it could be their last time. Yeah. And like it talks about Jim. Sport. Yeah, and there's an interview with sorry, Matt. There's an interview with Jackie Stewart that was counting the amount of friends that he'd lost. He'd lost 57 friends through racing. 57. It's nuts. Now the drivers go out on the track, put 1 minute 30-second lap times in at stupid speeds. Yeah, that's risky, and they can still die. As we lost Antoine Hubert last year, but it's still relatively safe in comparison. So these guys are racing at the same, like, not the same sort of speeds as they're racing nowadays, but they're still racing at 150 miles an hour with goggles and a tin helmet with no seatbelts.
The next race we get to go, you got to dress up like that.
100%, I'll do it. I'll do it for 100 quid.
What was you going to say, Matt?
I was going to say, like, I think that's the best thing you could take away from any kind of professional sport in this era. And I think what goes down to training, and I think of this within Formula One, but also in professional fighting. You think of boxing, you think of mixed martial arts, you think of motor racing, and how these athletes, and everyone should be classed as an athlete, train to prepare their bodies in the best way to avoid any of these kind of issues and scenarios. You think of modern day Formula One racers now, if you look at their social media or look at the way they're training, they're always working around their necks, which is so important to just deal with all the kind of chaos that comes in with driving a car or the G-force and whatnot. And what's really interesting is around that era, I had my father was a slightly elderly chap, and he was motor racing around that kind of time when Fangio was racing, and in fact raced at Silverstone the same day in a race before that British Grand Prix that Fangio was on. He was pole in 1954, 53, I believe, was British Grand Prix. And so when you go to Formula One now, you'll see all kinds of different random cars doing their kind of things. You see the F2, F3. My father was driving a Jaguar around that era, and did a race in Silverstone that same weekend. But one thing I always remember from my dad racing was that he had a crash, not at that race, but had a high impact crash where he basically had to reconstruct his whole knee and was left with having a plastic kneecap replacement because of, in that era, whatever crash or, whether it's the design of the car or what was almost track safety, it was a different time then. So I think what is the greatest takeaway when you look, you look at the timeline of what has happened to Senna, Bianchi, and obviously sadly to Huber at Spa, that every loss is a massive tragedy, but you have to also, in a weird way, celebrate that we haven't had more of these accidents, because there have been many a crash, even pre-Halo, where you think, wow, we are really lucky that we have a lot of drivers that have had these crashes and are still here to keep racing and entertaining us. Yeah,
but I feel like if you look at, Halo came in, in 2018 was the first season, and in that first season, Charles Leclerc had that crash. Was it? I can't remember which track it was, where Fernando Alonso came over the top of the car.
Oh yeah, over his head.
Scraped off his halo. And then if we, there's many a crashes back. Like, Halo could potentially have saved Ayrton Senna's life. You never know. So, as Matt says, you're almost from every accident, you take something from it and improve safety every single time. And as long as we keep doing that and making the sport safer, then yeah, I think like as a documentary, the Life of Speed, Juan Manuel Fangio story is coming.
I was just waiting for
that.
Dre's been welling that on.
I've been like this like the whole time. He's good.
Every time. It's a good show. It's a good documentary. It's a bit slow to start, I will admit, and it's a little bit difficult to watch if you're not really into it because it is subtitled. But there is a lot of important people in it, and unlike Senna, it does use throwback interviews, but it has got people like Sir Jackie Stewart in it. It's got Toto Wolff. It's got Nico Rosberg. It's got Mika Hakkinen in it. It's Alan Prost in it, your arch rival, Matt, arch nemesis. They're all in it. The rival, yeah, get racing. You can raise Alan.
He's a rival in fashion. I love the way he dresses. That's the one thing I'll give him. His fashion sense is top class.
You just had to say Toto to me, and I'm in.
Yeah, well, it is slow to start, and unless you're actually interested in that period of like learning about why we compare Lewis to Fangio, like it is a little bit difficult to watch because it is all in a different language and it is all subtitled. But it's interesting and it's quite humbling to learn about him as a driver and why we all say Lewis has matched Fangio. Like, it's a benchmark.
I think to be honest with you, like as racing fans and especially in newbies. It's good for them to be able to take the time to be able to look at the history of the race because, like, while the world's on pause, you can kind of catch up now. If the sport's you can. There's so much access to stuff. So there's no excuse for people not to know this stuff. Yeah. Just quickly, just a question off topic, which I was kind of thinking of when you guys are speaking, like there. Especially like Senna, he comes across to me obviously as I wasn't watching racing then, but as a rock star, just someone like our version of like I don't know who would say like Pele-ish, or if it's in the NFL, people always
like Muhammad Ali, or
Muhammad Ali, like big like influential figures. Do we have someone like who could be like that, like a rock star, who can transcend to other sports where even if you don't watch the sport, you know who Michael Schumacher is. You know, that type of thing.
I feel like part of that is watered down by the professionalism of what's expected as a representative of brands, but also first and foremost a team. I feel like now within this, for better or for worse, this kind of corporate structure, I feel like now, all these races are not just racers and drivers and role models and all these superheroes and kids that want to drive, but they're also bad brand ambassadors. And they, of course, that any wrong turn that a driver will make now is going to make a big impact on the sponsors, which makes a big impact on the team. Mm-hmm. So I feel like while we have, I think, a really, really diverse range of characters, there is no way that you could say that we have a rock star style kind of, say, superstar in the sense of, say, crossover. I would say like Lewis Hamilton would be obviously the closest to it because he rubs shoulders with many of the famous people. Like best mates with Idris Elba. Well, he's not best mates, but he's mates with Idris Elba. He's had ex-girlfriends in the form of pussycat dolls. Like what kind of a lifestyle gives you that? But when you watch something like a Senna, for example, and you watch some of the footage when he's on TV shows where he basically is meeting his girlfriends on the sets of these shows, you're thinking, wow, if, back in the day when things were a little PG as far as the way people behave and act, when they see a rock star, they're thrown at you, the Senna is just like shoveling up the attention. And it was amazing to see because even like, for me as a football fan, and I think of Brazil and I think of sport, the first thing I think of is football. But then when you watch how Brazilians took to Formula One as fans, you're thinking, wow, this is like One Direction level concert mania. It was pretty fun. Not that I've been to One Direction concert, but the fandom was off another level.
I think though, like, I think Lewis is very much like Fangio in the way that Lewis will always be remembered as an incredible driver, the same as Schumacher's been remembered. But Senna was a rock star while he was alive, while he was racing. Lewis, yeah, he rubs, as Matt says, he rubs shoulders with people, and he has celebrity friends, and he's got his own fashion line and stuff like that. He has paved the way. I think actually now, because of things like Drive to Survive, and because of how F1 is trying to get younger people into the sport, we're setting up a precedent for that next rock star to be, because there's now way more exposure. Because when Senna was racing, and when people like James Hunt was racing, Niki Lauda, and like James Hunt is a playboy of F1. I think Formula One was like one of the biggest sports on TV at the time. Like there was football, and then there was Formula One. There wasn't really much on British TV, and it was one of the biggest global sports because it went racing in different countries every weekend. Whereas football, they had the World Cup every 4 years, but football was a big thing in the UK. So football and F1 were on par at that kind of time, and people would tune in to watch Senna race, like just watch Senna race, not to watch Formula One, just to watch Senna race. And I think F1 went through a bit of a lull where it lost a lot of fans. It's now gaining momentum again, and I feel that we are setting up that moment for there to be another rock star. And I personally feel that there's quite a few of the young drivers, because Lewis Hamilton wasn't getting as much media attention when he first joined McLaren in 2008 as someone like Lando Norris is getting now.
Yeah,
because there's been a wave of new media titles coming out. There's been there's sim racing now that he's getting gamers involved. So I feel like someone like Charles Leclerc or Lando Norris could potentially be the next rock star if they follow in Lewis's shoes and have many different facets that they can do, like either it's a fashion line or do this or like Lewis goes to the Met Gala, so he is the closest to a rock star we got in Formula One. But if someone like Charles Leclerc went to the Met Gala, I think he'd be bigger.
You see, I was just about to jump in there and say Charles Leclerc is the coolest person. What we'll do is
coolest and the kindest.
We'll probably have at some point a cool off between all the different drivers. We'll figure that out at some point. We'll figure out who the coolest is as we get nearer to the races. Now, Matt has his famous game.
You're missing up my second film, my friend.
Sorry, my bad. I've just missed it altogether.
How dare you?
I'm so eager to get to this game. I was just willing to just jump over it.
The curiosity can wait, and how poor Sir Frank Williams and Claire Williams you will feel for you trying to override their Williams documentary. Disrespect. But don't worry.
Claire, I'm sorry. Much love. I love you.
I mean, you think that was disrespectful? I spent about 20 minutes typing in McLaren in all the search engines trying to find a McLaren documentary, and I realized I was typing in McLaren instead of Williams. And I was like, oh, okay, I see where I'm going from here.
Highest level of disrespect.
I was clicking on an article, like watching the trailer, and I was like, I can't find a film. So I was watching on an article or a trailer of Williams, and then just going to Google, typing in McLaren. I was like, what's wrong with you, guy?
That's way worse.
That's how much of a fan I am.
Suddenly, I feel better.
Lando Mania is taken strong. But yeah, Williams documentary is kind of it's kind of weird because I always feel like when a team has documentary and it's just called Williams, I was thinking this is going to be just a corporate mess and just mumbo jumbo and another kind of corporate little film and or whatever. But actually was very surprised. So the Williams documentary, which was released in 2017, very, very new, and this is kind of the Bottas. But so Bottas was still obviously at Williams at this point in the documentary. But actually, I was kind of thinking, right, what can top Senna? And actually, for me, I felt like Williams was actually a much more engaging and interesting documentary because it's less about the team, but more about the people behind it. So, of course, Sir Frank Williams is a man that actually came from not as much as the more wealthier people of the modern era of F1 had come from, but actually was a man that would have to buy parts, to sell parts, and would do this kind of gradual rise of the ladder, and was very one-track minded and did things his way, and basically was it's not even an understatement. This man was obsessed. Like the definition of obsession by motorsport was Sir Frank Williams. Back when he was little Frankie W. back in the day, he was a very, very strong character within the world of motorsport. From building his own team, and then selling his team, then going through a massive depression, and having his friends help him pull himself out of a rut to reform his own team, and then basically work his way back up into Formula One history, winning his first race out of Silverstone as a team owner. So a man that wanted to race and loved racing. This is literally a guy that would love speed, and not that kind of speed as in the racing and the thrill of it. He was a very, very driven kind of character which he put all his energies and all his mentality into basically making this at one point very successful team. And I think what was really good about the structure was there was one, of course, in the opposite way to Senna, where he had obviously not so much retrospective interviews, but very linear interviews with Sir Frank Williams and Claire Williams, but also the story was structured in a kind of, you kind of had a flip-flopping parallel of where would kind of focus on Frank's career, then obviously Claire's career as she was starting to take over the reins, and you've seen that grow progressively throughout. So it's really amazing that I think they do a really good way of not overly doing the whole females and racing thing, which I think is so important, because as much as we would want to see more diversity, more colour, more gender, split and share within F1, she kind of does the kind of who cares kind of thing. So it's like, look, regardless of my gender, I'm here and this is what I am. And of course, Claire Williams is now team principal now of Williams. She's heading it up all there. Her dad's still there watching, but of course, the most interesting moment in that film, but one of the key moments that is focused on within that film is when Sir Frank Williams obviously got in a road accident, leaving Paul Ricard after testing, because he wanted to go on a flight in time to do a fun run back in London, because this man loved running. So he crashed his car on the way to an airport with some of his nearest and dear, with some of his kind of teammates in the car, and crashed, fractured spine, paralyzed basically from the neck down. Hence why you might see this character in Drive to Survive, but in and around the tracks, in a wheelchair. And obviously he's a very striking looking chap with piercing eyes. He looks like a Bond villain, but is actually the man that's has got a heart of gold and a heart full of soul. He is. I think that's the most interesting thing with Formula One and being a great athlete, is like you've got to burn people along the way, no matter what happens. And that is obviously a story that's told within this. There's a sibling rivalry. You have a brother that thought he would have some kind of say in the future of Williams, but Claire Williams obviously, rightfully, I would say, took over Williams in name of her father. But amazing story about also family, which I felt was really significant in this, because Virginia, the wife of Sir Frank Williams, was such an important, it would be a disrespect to say a backbone or a spine, because I think she was more than that, because this woman had an impact on the team, drivers. Actually, you know what I was going to do? I was going to do a Sam thing and change my background for this, because I had a special little background ready, because there are interviews with Nigel Mansell. And so this is Nigel Mansell's golf course in Woodbury, which I used to live near when I was a child. So Formula One has been lurking in my history by choice. So I thought, instead of having Claire or Sir Frank, then people might watch this and see this out of context and think, what's this background? Well, I've got Nigel Mansell's golf course. And of course, he was a racer for Williams, gave very good, very fascinating interviews, because at the time of the crash, Nigel Mansell and Nelson Piquet were driving for Williams at the time of this crash. So overall, for me personally, I actually felt like this was a much more interesting and probably a better documentary. Obviously, the makers of of Senna has had people that made great documentaries. The name escapes me of that director, but has also done a documentary around Amy Winehouse. But with the Williams story, this was produced by BBC, And they have their director was a BAFTA award-winning Morgan Matthews. So as far as the amazing recreations and there's amazing interviews, very, very well put together footage. I thought this was a solid of a documentary that I've seen within Formula One, not even if it was of the sport, but in general, a very, very good documentary that could cover all genres. So kudos to that team. I actually thoroughly enjoyed that and would arguably say I enjoyed it probably more than Senna.
Oh,
I'm definitely gonna watch that.
No, you got to watch it now.
Yeah. I feel like Williams is a wicked team. Like, a lot of people forget that they've got 9 Constructors World Championships and they've got 7 Driver World Championships. I mean, they're plumb last at the moment. I really, really, really hope they get up there because they're one of the sport's oldest teams that's currently racing for Mercedes and McLaren, I think, and Ferrari, because obviously Ferrari have been from the start. But like as Williams F1, they've been doing it since 1977, I think. So yeah, I think there as a team to have a documentary like that.
I think people root on Claire, like as well, like newer fans, kind of root on Claire because obviously she's the only female, predominantly. Obviously there's some engineers and so forth, but predominantly powerful female in Formula One. And as a person, obviously you can see that the weight that she's carrying of because it's her dad. He's built this legacy, and obviously, as Matt just went through the story, like it's just a lot of stuff, hard work and graft that he's put into this thing, and so legacy, that's bigger than even him. Like with obviously the trophies that they've won. Obviously, Nigel. I grew up with Nigel Mansell's name being mentioned all the time. So Williams was the team. So I really, I mean, all true fans of the sport would actually really want them to continue and to get back to at least the top part of the grid.
Yeah,
well,
I mean, go on, Matt.
No, I was going to say, I think if you weren't rooting for Claire, based on what you might have seen through Drive to Survive and how they're struggling, struggling to get the right funding to do the kind of car that they know they can make, then this story is also another layer of why I think any Formula One racing fan, or at least a British Formula One racing fan, would want a future success story in Williams, because you don't want to lose a family-run business, but you also want a team that's homemade to keep going through, because they're just, think of them like the little village team. They're holding in amongst all these greats and all these massive corporate teams. So more power to them. I hope they can get successful again.
And actually, we've just talked about how Senna was like a rock star of F1 and one of the greatest drivers ever. Senna died in a Williams because he signed for Williams that season. So it just shows how impactful Williams were as well, because they had the best driver in their car, and it was very unfortunate that it was that race. But yeah, he was racing for Williams in his final season. So
you guys covered both all the films very well. I'm sure the people all involved with the
film
get on it. Will love that.
Get watching.
I will come up with my one.
It's a good 8 hours of content you can kill 8 hours of time with.
Yes, you can definitely kill a whole day with that. I'll tell you.
Boring.
Right,
definitely. So, drum roll. Let's get to this game.
Oh, here we go, ladies and gentlemen. It is round 2 of the Alternative F1 podcast quiz. Yes, we are back with another quiz because the last one was so successful. I don't know. We're just guessing at this stage, but we have another very highly articulate quiz of depths of research that is you cannot compare to. Millionaire, weakest link, you name it. Nothing on this, because I have scaled very hardly some very important, significant research. I have gone on IMDb and looked at all the ratings and have managed to figure out from highest to lowest which was the most highly rated documentary between me and Sam had watched. So I would like to throw it to you. And Sam, yes, you can be a part of this as long as you haven't looked at the IMDb ratings.
I can be a part of it.
He's probably looking at it now.
Listen, I'm not a cheat. That is one thing. I'm not Michael Schumacher.
I like
that. Blasphemy.
I like that.
He's a cheat. He cheated. I'm not gonna lie. He stopped in the pit lane to stop his teammate getting tyres. Let's be honest.
Very well. Controversial nevertheless, but hopefully no controversy in these results of this quiz because
Sam's details are below.
Spam. Go on, send me a hate mail.
Between these 4 films, documentaries, it was Senna, Williams, Shelby American, and of course the Fangio story. I can't say the whole thing; it's too long. But of course these ratings are going to be variable because some were released in different times and dates. Some are newer than others. But out of 10, we want your highest and lowest rated, please. Which out of Senna, Williams, Shelby American, and Fangio's documentaries has the highest and lowest rating?
I'm gonna say Senna's the highest and Shelby American's the lowest.
Interesting. What numbers out of 10 would you predict?
Senna, I'd say is it just 8 or 9, or are we doing actual IMDb scores?
It's out of 10. Out of 10. It's points, but I will accept your rounded number. I'm
going to go with 8.4.
It's difficult. I'm gonna go with Senna because obviously it's a newer film, and obviously it's such a big fan base he has.
Yeah.
So
I feel like, yeah.
Yes, I mean, I never heard of Sam's film or the racer before he mentioned him. Just being honest, so I'm gonna go all in on Senna, and I'll go 9.
9, interesting. And lowest, Sam, what would be your lowest film?
Shelby American lowest, and I give that a rating of 6.8.
Andre,
I'll give that 4.
Oh, you think it's going to be Shelby as well? As a 4. Well, I gotta say I'm impressed with one person's numbers who had got them pretty close to being bang on. So the highest rating film, of course, was Senna.
Oof, but who got the number?
And the rating of Senna was 8.5 in favour of Sam. 1 point off. Called it 8.4. He knows his IMDb scores. This is a man that watches many.
There's something going on here. There's something going on here.
I touch wood. I swear to God, I did check.
There can be no cheating because my production notes for this are on computer notes. So this isn't even on our shared production document. Hidden scores, backdoor.
Also, if I was going to cheat, I would have gone with 8.5. Come on.
No, you can't make it that obvious.
No, you would go.
No, you're not going to go with it.
I'm not. Listen, guys. Listen. You're giving me a lot of credit. I'm not that smart. So.
Well, that answer, we might be able to verify this or not based on your answer because both of you went for Shelby American as a rating.
I must be right with a 4.
But sadly, it is not the lowest rating IMDb documentary out of our quadret.
What, Williams?
So luckily, no. Fangio, I think because it's newer and I think because people might be off put by language, that got a rating of 6.8.
So I got the right number.
So you got the right number, Sam. Good numbers. Basically, we need to hit up Las Vegas with Sam. Get on that poker table, and he's going to be the man that's going to numbers. He's going to read hands. So Senna, of course, was 8.5. Williams was 7.6 out of 10. Shelby American was 7.4, and Fangio was 6.8. In fact, both of my documentaries that I looked at on Rotten Tomatoes is at a 93% Rotten Tomatoes score. Senna is certified fresh. Williams, I have no idea why it isn't, even though it's a 93, but positive ratings.
I'll tell you what is certified by Sam, though, is The Life and Times of Juan Manuel Fangio. So give it a watch.
It's got that stamp. Boom.
Your review got me interested.
That's my boom. Out of them, I'd say boom to Fangio, boom to Senna. If you fancy a light-hearted, very kind of fun, easy film, definitely watch Shelby American. I wouldn't say it's as certified by Sam as Senna and Fangio. But yeah, I mean, obviously I'm going to watch Williams and see, well, that's probably going to get certified by Sam, to be fair, because I like Williams. So there you go.
I do need to stop watching Drive to Survive because I think I just really enjoy it.
I'm on my third repetition of the series. The second series.
The second one. Honestly, it's the first one got me really hooked, and the second one's even better. But just the first one definitely got me absolutely hooked. And obviously, if you look at the last episode of the first series, without spoiling it, if anyone hasn't seen it, it's just like it's definitely like preview. It lets you know what it guides you to where we are now, and it's fun to be able to look back at the predictions and of these drivers. So definitely. Sorry. But you must watch the new stuff. You must watch other stuff as well. I must stop watching the same thing, and I must stop watching Entourage as well. That's what.
I love Entourage.
Guys, it's we're getting closer and closer to racing, and it's the news that's coming out all the time from the guys at F1 and other big newspapers, news outlets, so forth are looking more and more positive that we're going to be watching racing soon. So I'm very, 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 very excited. The outfits, will start coming back on. So the team apparel will start being worn again. Because I've just given up hope for a little while. I didn't know what was going to happen. No, but appreciate you guys. Have a look at obviously our Instagram, new Instagram page at Alternative Sports. We've got lots of coverage of all different sports there. Obviously, we thank you so much for the love that we've been getting for this show and the viewers and on YouTube and obviously on Spotify, Deezer, and all other reputable podcast outlets. So basically, thank you so much for supporting us and letting us do what we love. We appreciate you guys.
See you all later.
See you soon, guys.
Watch some documentaries, you lovely people.
Please keep on washing your hands, people, and stay indoors and do as you're told so we can get to racing quicker. Peace.